I want you to think first of all as an individual when we present this information, and then join with others to discuss it. So this is a case, the man's name is Steve Dalton. And this is the picture that's associated with it. So all information that is given in a PBL case has some form of relevance. So each piece we want the students to make sure that they acknowledge it, they jot it down on a piece of paper, or they put it up on the board. So is there any bit of information that you want to put up about what we've got now? Yeah. I've divided the board up. Now some tutors don't do this, but I quite like this, and I felt that it was appropriate that I show you what I do, so that you can choose to do it or not.
I could do this. I'm all free for it.
Yeah. But I like this way because it keeps information tidy on the board. Oh, thank you. So, Julie, can you put up some headings? So, does everybody remember what the first heading was? Key information. This is very basic. Key information. So what key information can you get so far? Accident. Motorbike accident. Yep. Anything else that might need to go up there? Yep. No helmet. Very good. That might have been my selection of a Google diagram. The other part is his name. Goes up. Yeah. And he's a he. Okay, now I'd like somebody to read this out. This is the first slide. Now we're going to be getting key information, and I want you with somebody to read out, so we're all reading it together. Would anybody like to do that? Who feels comfortable?
In this case, Steve Dalton, a 20-year-old motorcycle courier, is brought in an ambulance to accident and emergency following a traffic accident in which he came off his motorcycle. He is conscious and complaining loudly of pain. When asked where it hurts, he indicates the right side of the neck, right shoulder, and the lateral aspect of right arm down to the thumb.
Thank you. Now, there's a lot of information in that, so what we want to do is break it down. So, would anybody like to call out from the first paragraph, first bit up the top, what is key information that Julie needs to write up?
A student.
Julie's a student, so she's going to be collating your work. So what's key information in that first part? 20 years old, thank you. Traffic accident. Motorcycle, so we've got those up. Anything else? Do you know what a courier is? Do you know what a motorcycle courier? So this person's job is a courier, so he transfers information and things. So, and he arrives by ambulance to the ED. So he's not just had a little nick of his knee, he's looks as though by ambulance means that he's quite sick. What else? The next paragraph. Conscious. Pain. Anything from the next part? So you can put pain. Yeah. So this is where you start to develop like a tree diagram with things. So you know we've got pain, it's in certain areas, so you can put that along there. Now, is there any part of that that you don't understand? Now, I know that you're all doctors and have experience in this sort of thing, but think very basic. What sort of things are in there that you think you might need to understand or question each other about? So you want to know the man's blood pressure to see whether he's okay. So in fact, because he's coming by ambulance, you want to do his vital signs to see that he's going to survive us doing this. Yeah. So that's good. So you've got a priority, don't you? Yeah. Anything else? Broken bones, yeah. So now we're going. Well, that's neat to know. Yeah. But what happens is, something like this happens, in a PBL we don't necessarily all go down on the one path. Like you've now given me a potential hypothesis that he's broken his bone. My supervisor. So a hypothesis can be that he's broken a bone. Whilst you're brainstorming, all these things do come out. You know, what do we need to know to understand this problem? Is there anything up there that we don't understand? All of these things do come and bubble to the surface at the time. But as a tutor, you will then turn around and say, well, that one is actually a hypothesis. Muscular damage. Are we looking at any particular part with a fracture and with muscular damage? Okay, so why did you say nerve, cervical nerve?
Because of the symptoms and the size of the patients, he has indicated that the pain of the right side of the neck, and then the right shoulder, and the lateral aspect of the right arm down to his thumb. Yeah, I imagine that maybe the cervical nerve can be affected because of his trauma.
Okay, so how does that cause the pain? How can he be feeling that pain? Yeah. So if I was to look at the underlying primary principles here, what is pain? How do we feel pain? You've told me that there's this nerve that goes down this arm, and it's a particular nerve that has particular areas. So as a tutor, it's really important to be able to break it down, because you have got knowledge, you know what you're talking about, but I want the students to tell me underneath, how do we know, what is that pain? How do we feel pain? What is the transmitter of that pain? So can anybody give me a quick rundown of that?
Write it on the board, or we say it out loud, or write it on the board.
Yes, that's right. Because we've got a big group here, that we won't get you tomorrow we'll get you to write on the board, because you'll be the students. But that's right. If you wanted to, you're more than welcome to come up and do it, but I don't think we've got enough board space, have we? But you can. But that's the thing. If somebody came up and said, well, I don't really understand how the nerve, how pain is transmitted on a nerve, and then what is a nerve, and then what's the structure of the nerve, where does the nerve go, and everything. That's what Julie was writing down here. That's my need to know box down here too. Down here.
I call that learning issues.
Learning. I say it's need to know. Now the reason I say it's need to know is because as you go on in the tutorial, somebody might actually come up with it and say, oh, that's such and such, and then they'll cross it off. Or they'll say, we need to develop it, and then they'll have a couple of points down here, and feel free to put as many points down here. And then at the end, they'll work out their learning issues by combining some and refining what's written in there.
So I've just put pain mechanisms.
Good.
Broad topic.
Very broad, isn't it? So what else do you...
I think the big problems in
Actually, I think the big problem is the approaches to the multi-organ, yes, to the multi-organ trauma, the way to approaching after multi-organ trauma. Yes, because pain is the symptom, but the major scenario in this problem is the after the accident, and we must do a way to approach the multi-organ.
All right.
I know what
systematical.
Yes, so you are speaking like a true clinician. You see, what you're saying here is what I want the student to be able to do is to be at the door to do a primary survey with my motorbike accident. That's not the purpose of this PBL. This PBL is about pain mechanisms. And these people are learning about pain mechanisms in the context of an accident. 2 years later, in this same course, they do the multi-trauma. It's a clinical year, surgery, multiple trauma, primary survey, secondary survey, all of that. So where would the students go with this and how we guide them depends on the purpose of the case. Yeah, but this is one of the tensions for clinicians. They jump straight to, what would I do? Oh, I know, I've got to treat this like a multi-trauma, you know, I want to stabilise his cervical spine, and, you know, get him on a board and do the primary survey and, you know, do everything, you know, ABC, In the surgery case, when they do it in third year, that's when they do that, same thing. In that particular case, it's someone falls while abseiling on a cliff. Okay, and they fall a long way, and they have, you know, unconscious, you know, and we do the whole thing. So it's what the case is designed to do. It doesn't always follow the most authentic path. In this one, or this is a first year case, the students are actually just thinking about what's the mechanism. The focus is different. Yeah. Does that make sense to you? Yeah. You worry that they might model bad medical practice, don't you? Yeah. It won't. It's okay.
Yeah, it doesn't, because the students are only at a certain level. They only have. It's one of the learning theories, Vygotsky, has the zone of proximal development, which is students are in. You teach within a range of what we know the students are able to succeed in, but push them a little bit so that we don't overwhelm them, but we keep them with. But the cases are specifically written to explore aspects of the curriculum, not all of them.
I would like to add though, we have many paramedics come to do medicine. So the paramedic student would immediately jump to exactly where you went. But that's fine, we then work with that. We then push them back and push them back. And our paramedic students often go, I know what to do, actually I don't know why. I don't understand the underlying mechanisms. I've been trained, but I haven't had the deep understanding. So
because they're now in a different context. They're working in a different context and have to understand it from a different perspective.
I'm sorry, but I think this is not suitable scenario to approach the pain, because this is the really accident, and when you give us the scenarios, student can miss because the victim is still conscious. It's very dangerous if he's intrahumerus.
So it's a lucid interval.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when the admitted to the hospital, yes, he didn't complain to the head pain. Yes, but he was a severe accident. Yes, and fall down to the street. Yes, and it can can cause the student miss a dangerous. Yes.
Okay. So this is why a PBL curriculum needs to be constructed by year. This is a first year case, not a sixth year case. If this was a sixth year case, it would be all about management. But this is not about management. First year students are not up to management. They're up to learning about the physiology, the pathology, that kind of thing. I do see what you're saying.
Could I comment in Vietnamese first? Chắc xin nói tiếng Việt chỗ này. Chắc các bạn xin lỗi em á. Thật ra những cái ý của cô á, không phải là cô đang hướng dẫn chúng ta là tiếp cận bệnh nhân này như thế nào. Mà cái cô đang ví dụ á, cô đang ví dụ là để cho chúng ta hiểu rằng cái tiến trình làm PBL mà chúng ta đang đóng vai, chúng ta là học sinh sinh viên á, đang tiếp cận được đối tượng như theo hướng cô nói. Chứ mà chúng ta đang thảo luận cái chuyện là ở đây chúng ta đang tiếp cận bệnh nhân để theo cái hướng đó, tại cô cũng thích như vậy.
Tức là nếu như mà lý do là vì em cảm nhận cái tình huống này đưa ra nó ví dụ như nếu mà mình chỉ tiếp cận vấn đề như vậy thì
mình sẽ đưa ra cái tình huống khác. Tại vì em nghĩ rằng là nếu mà cái tình huống này á, ví dụ như đưa ra cho sinh viên năm nhất, năm hai chẳng hạn đi, mà mình tiếp cận một bệnh nhân theo cái hướng là cơ chế bị đau hay gì đó, thật ra nó sẽ gieo trong đầu sinh viên những cái ấn tượng về cái sự tiếp cận nó
không ở đây chưa có nói tới cái vấn đề tiếp cận bệnh hay gì hết. Ở đây đang nói thế này. Đầu tiên là chúng ta phải làm sao để contract knowledge, đang trong cái bước đó thôi. Nghĩa là đang làm sao từ cái vấn đề đó cô mới đưa ra được là bây giờ đến vấn đề này sinh viên phải tìm hiểu thông tin gì, đang nói cái bước đó thôi, đang ở bước đó thôi, đang mới chưa đi đến bước đó. Thế là bây giờ cô đang là tới cái vùng mà đang xác định những vấn đề cần phải biết, đang chỗ đó. Sorry for Vietnamese.
That's fine. That's fine.
We are very happy for you to have conversations in Vietnamese. And what we just witnessed is active learning, debate, co-construction, confusion. You know, there are some concepts to be learned here about PBL, and it's confronting. There is a confrontation, but very carefully resolved. I think we need to hold on to your concern. I think you have an important concern. Let's keep going with the workshop and see how we work it through. Okay?
Because I miss your idea, because I think in the first, you didn't give me the topic we to discuss. Yes, and you give me a trigger. Trigger. That's this.
And
the reason we partly do that is exactly to provoke this sort of conversation. You have just made a very useful contribution to our workshop. These are the issues we want you to work through. So you have done the right thing, not the wrong thing.
And it's so valuable to be able to express your concerns over this sort of teaching. So thank you.
I think we need to know about pain mechanism to focus
Okay,
to
thank
focus and find out some where it's going wrong. Some organ, when it's going wrong, it has some symptom, especially it's special for this. So if the student know about pain mechanism, they can find out the organ go wrong.
That's really good.
Yes. I think like referred pain, you know, that sort of thing.
Well, I think our body has pain receptor all over the body, over every organism. So when these pain receptors are stimulated by some kind of injury, for example, in this case, then those stimulation is transferred through the receptor and the nerve to the central nervous system, and then we feel there's something wrong at that place. If it's some kind of direct stimulation to help the body know where's something wrong. Another case is those receptors are stimulated because of an injury somewhere else, but they share the same pathway to the central nervous system. It's a referral pain, like you have mentioned.
Yes.
That's all I remember from my years.
That's really important, because now what you're talking about, we've got, as Julie said, when we put down the need to know, we put down pain mechanisms, but we're actually now talking about pain pathways, aren't we? So we're talking about what is the underlying anatomy of this system, which is basically we're looking at the nervous system. And so we're going to try, the reason, as I said, why I put it as a need to know, because when we actually go to the students going and doing self-directed learning, they'll need to be able to refine those issues. And so by discussing further, we've heard that there are now pain pathways, there are now receptors in there, there's it involves the brain, so we can actually start to make these learning issues something that they can achieve in a couple of days before they have to report it back. So that's, as a tutor, we will be doing that.
So I've just added on need to know, just because to bring the conversation there. Anatomy of arm nerves, anatomy of spinal nerves, and it may be that associated with this class there is an anatomy lab about exactly this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now I'll just go on. So now what I've got here is just an example of, as I said, we're going to do a work design. You've done it here, but I just want to recap on how we could collate it together in another way. So what I've got here is what our group would have done is exactly what you've got, boarded by ambulance, which is critical because we know the level of injury. Came off a bike when, conscious now, so that was raising your issue of whether the person actually did lose consciousness or not. It might be deceiving. So we've got key information here, complaining of pain and where it was. So you've got all of that information up there, but whilst you're brainstorming, you put up a lot of other things. Nothing is ever, as I said, on a simple plane. We're trying to play on a soccer field and the ball goes all sorts of different ways. We try to collect all of that bits of information up there so that we can make sense of it. In a good PBL room, we'd actually had 3 or 4 more of these boards so that we could be expanding each of those points as we go along. So the fact that you talked about this, the pain pathway here, we'll get you up there to draw that for us and have that as like a scheme up on another board to help us in refining what we need to know later. Okay. We've done that. So here, the hypotheses that have been put up, we've actually agreed with some and we've got some more. So, yeah, I was just going to say, I just realised we've got a very Australian thing. Can you spot that? Insurance fraud. So somebody who's mimicked this accident and wants to try and get some money. So that's a very typical thing to have, but it's good to put up because, you know, it's somebody brainstorming in the group and they put up that sort of thing. Sometimes they might say, quite often they say snake bite as well. So they have to be able to justify, though, why that point is kept up there. So then you ask, well, why is that? What's the mechanisms of that? And usually then it gets a line through it. That's the other point. Anything that goes up on this board, we keep up there. We don't erase it, we don't rub it off. If we are going to do anything, we will put a line through it if we say that we're not interested in that anymore, because it shows the group where you've been, and so you're not to repeat not to repeat on that further down, or further information might say, well, that one actually was all right, so then they'll type the line off. So, more information? We're going to be doing that in a minute. So we've actually scooted through quite a few of these. So up here we've got some further information which I should have maybe asked you to put up a little bit more, but there are some obvious ones like along the line of the fracture, having an x-ray. Is there anything else that you'd like to add up on here for extra information that we haven't got? Yes? Really important. Yep. Is there anything else that you would like to put up there?
Glasgow score.
Thank you. Glasgow score.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So in doing this on the board, so does everybody know what the Glasgow coma score is? What that relates to? I was trying to look at some of our pure scientists at the back, but and what's a good score?
It's evaluate three aspects of the patients. The first one is the movement of the muscle. Yeah. The second one is the movement of the eyes, and finally the voices, the response of the patients to the stimulation.
Thank you. Now, our students most probably wouldn't be able to say that, but can you see up on the board here how we've got a few bits here that they might actually be able to link later on after they've done some research on it? You know, they've got one here about what muscles and things can they move. That might be part of it, and we could actually use that as a hook to link it into when they do some need to know and come back and report on it. So they might not know that at that stage, but it's as a tutor you can actually have those as links to it. I think we've got more information coming. Okay, I truncated, I made this shorter, so there are other slides on it that I thought I had, but I made it shorter. So, you've done a brilliant job. Now, I want you now to work out, if we didn't understand this part here, how are we going to write a learning issue that everybody in our group can actually achieve and understand what knowledge we are actually all going to go away and research individually. So, can anybody work out how are we going to do that? Yeah?
I have a question that in Australia, medical school is the undergraduate score or postgraduate score. In Vietnamese, medicine is undergraduate score. So the students don't have basic clinical knowledge. So they don't know about chemistry, don't know physics, don't know a lot of, and so I think in PBL learning, how can teach the basic sound for them? We use that PBL to teach basic sound for students. Thank you.
That's a great question. I'll just do 2 points for that. Is that this course that this case was in is yes, it's presented as a first year case. However, we're in a graduate entry course, so these students have done a previous degree who are in first year, so that would be the equivalent of your third year students doing this. However, we also have some what we call we have a group called clinical science students who come in straight from school, and then they join the graduate entry when they go into their third year of being in uni, which is their first year of the medical course. But those students who come in and even if this was an undergraduate medical course and if it was in a first year, as a PBL tutor, I'd relish that opportunity. I would love that opportunity, because students who don't have preformed ideas as to what is causing this will ask very basic questions. People who have an idea about it might ask more higher level questions, and we might not get to understanding the basic mechanisms from primary principles because we assume that knowledge. So students who don't have a background that we have in our graduate course, some of them come from being an oboe player in an orchestra and have done a Bachelor of Music, and they get into our medical course. Even at school they wouldn't have done maths, physics, chemistry, biology. They haven't done those. They've come from music, history, English, or another language. They come into our medical course, and they are, to me, they are key in stimulating the conversation. They will ask the most basic questions, and they might have an idea that nobody else has thought about because they come from a different frame of reference. That makes that soup that I was telling you earlier so much richer. And it also helps the ones who have got that knowledge. It helps them to question that knowledge and then think, well, if I was with a patient and that patient didn't understand, for example, why they had that pain, I could possibly draw them a very basic diagram and say, you know, in your body you've got these nerves and they come down here, and you know, why have I got pain in another part where that nerve isn't? So as a doctor, you've got to be able to break things down and communicate to people who have very little knowledge about their body. This is a rehearsal for that as well. So people who, when you put things up on a board, the students can not assume that knowledge and rehearse drawing and rehearse communicating and rehearse explaining in a very safe environment. So does that help? Did you want to?
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. I do understand your worry about introducing PBL in a first-year university course. Many schools do have PBL in their very first year because you design the case and the learning objectives to that level. And that's what we were saying before. There are many different levels. So the levels here might be getting to, and in fact this case is, about getting to the fundamental physiology of what a nerve is, about saltatory conduction, about repair mechanisms, you know, about neurochemistry, about receptors and how terminals release chemicals and what the chemicals are, and even the structure of some of those chemicals, maybe neuropeptides. Okay, so you can design it so that you are pitched at that level. Most first students coming in first year into medicine have at least basic biology, basic chemistry, basic physics from high school, basic maths. But as Julian was saying, we have about 20% of our graduate entry students have not had a science background. But the other students take them with them, and they learn very, very, very fast, and sometimes they become our top students. Yeah.
Because they don't assume, they ask questions about everything. And it's hard work for them, and as a tutor, one of my roles is actually to counsel them and help them get through that hard road, because sometimes it can be quite an emotional road for them, but as a tutor we form that relationship with them as well. Okay, are you interested in going on and seeing what happens?
We're going to make this the last session of the day.
Yeah. So we've got further information. So would anybody else like to read it out?
So reading out is a process role of PBL. Students read out and they take turns.
Steve says that he was in the city when a car in front of him that was turning left suddenly stopped. Steve hit the back of the car and was thrown forward over the handlebars onto the road, landing on his right shoulder.
Okay, now we've got more information. Now, have you noticed I've just handed Julie a different colour pen? Because what we want to do now is we want to build up this information. So now we're going to have new information. Some of this is going to answer some of our questions. Some of it is going to embellish our key information even more. But we have to highlight where that is. So we use a different colour. So hopefully we're giving you these process tips that can help develop this. So what is key and what's answered some of our information? Landing on his right shoulder. So the significance of landing on his right shoulder? Okay, yeah.
Because the richer bone
So he's taken all that force on that area, and we've got all these structures in that area that could actually be impacted on. Any other bits of information? So he's actually thrown over the handlebars. So what sort of structure is in the way of being thrown over? Spine? Head? Yeah. I'm being a really good tutor here, I'm going.
Usually tutor doesn't give any clue.
No, you have to stay there, go. Okay. So does that change any of your hypotheses at the moment? So you want a spine injury in there? I think that's very good. That's the other important thing, is adding things as you get more information. You can do that. Somebody in the last one said, how many hypotheses can you have up there? You can have as many as you think is going to be able to explain what's happening, and then you can always put a line through, so that's okay. Someone else read?
Before examination, Steve is found to have swelling and tenderness over the right side of the neck and is unable to move his shoulder without pain. Palpation over the right clavicle produced severe localized pain.
Okay, thank you. Does that help? Right, so we're now focusing in on an area. So up here, Judy, we might put anything else? Pain still in his neck, severe pain in his neck. Unable to move. Now, as this would be a first year case, I would turn around and ask them, what does palpation mean? So it's not assuming that everybody knows what each term means. So it's always about questioning them. You know, what does palpation mean? And I always would struggle and puzzled and, you know, don't know what palpation means, tell me. So sometimes it's good to do that sort of thing because it gives permission for the students to say, well, I really don't know either, and others will turn around and say the same. So you are allowing them to not know and giving them permission to question. Are we going to look at any refining of our hypotheses yet? Maybe not. Maybe we can just still keep them, do you think? Or anything that you think that can have a line through it yet? Or you think it's going to be number one? So fracture you're really keen on? So spine fracture, so we've got spinal injury in there. So what we might do is we might actually rank them. Now we've got a little bit more information. Anybody else like to read? Thank you.
When asked to describe his pain, Steve said that the neck and shoulder pain is constant, a shock of acting on gnawing. The pain in the arm is different, more of a sharp, tingling or burning.
Okay. So what, is there any words in there that you don't know what it means? Yeah?
Cervical fracture.
So you, yeah? Thank you.
Damage the nerve.
So we've got a damaged nerve here. So, yeah, so why do you say we've got a damaged nerve? What's the key information in here that pulls it out?
Yes, because the sensation is burning or sharp, tingling. Yes.
Okay.
This is the pain of the nerve damage.
Okay, so we can put up here that we've got change in sensation associated with this. And as a tutor, I'd say, well, why have we got this change in sensation? What is the mechanism behind that change in sensation?
Yes, yeah, because I think maybe if he had the cervical fractures, yes, the fracture bone can cause hurt to the sensory nerve, yes, or yeah, if his clavicle fracture and sensory nerve behind under the clavicle, yes, the fracture bone can hurt.
Okay, thank you. You've given some key words in there that the students might not know. You've said sensory nerve. Do we have other sorts of nerves? Why did you say sensory? What is a sensory nerve? So we're aiming again back down to here. We're going to now put some need to knows, and some, we're going to start to clarify a little bit or narrow down where we want our students to learn. So that was excellent, thank you. So can you see how that works? As a tutor,
The constant pain, constant pain, a shock of acting on constant pain.
Yeah. So I was going to say, does everybody know what gnawing means? Yeah, it's a very Australian. Yes, very good. Do you want to show? What does gnawing mean? You did it with your hand brilliantly.
I think it's something that keep on biting and
Yeah, like a rat. Yeah. It was really good. And as a tutor, you'd pick up on those bits. You know, you'd watch the students, you'd be seeing them, and you say immediately that happens. You know, explain it because it was so good. You know, it's very descriptive. But there are people who might not know how to explain these things, how to describe it, and that is also part of communicating in our PBL group.
Notice there are other sharpness, tingling,
Yeah, we
and many sensory descriptions there to unpack.
Yeah. So you've got sensory sensations and things there. Now I'm just going to show you the next bit here. Now Julie's done a great job up here, but because we've got the computer, I can make it look a bit neater up here. So as you can see, we've got the red marker out, so we can actually add bits and pieces as we go. So as you use the pointer. So in the red, we've actually got all the bits of information that we can add. The organisation of the board, as I said before, can actually get quite messy, but in the long run you'll have other boards to be able to put things on it. But Julie's got things as it would really be in a PBL group, because you can't actually say how much space you're going to need to put all the information on. But up here we've basically got the same sorts of things, and we've got the extra of spinal injury. Somebody else has added that on there. Somebody's crossed off the insurance fraud because that's not clearly what it is. But we've still crossed it off because we've thought about it. We've answered some questions, and when we answer some questions, we cross them off. And as you can see here, we've got a plan as to how we're going to now start to examine this man. So these cases have a component whereby you're looking at the basic mechanisms, and you have to look at what's normal, then what's abnormal, and then how we're going to manage it. And so these cases pull in lots of things. This would not stand alone as a PBL. The PBL case is a stimulant for the rest of the week, so they'll go into their clinical. They might actually be doing upper nervous system assessments in their clinical skills lab. They might be reviewing x-rays, they might be looking at MRIs, they might have lectures that are associated with this, because this basic nervous system conduction is actually quite difficult. And do you know, it's one of those things where we really still don't know how the nerve conducts, because there are scientists who say that the flux of the sodium in and calcium out are too great. How can that actually happen physiologically? So there are still challenges to what we consider a basic nerve conduction out there. So we might have students who come back with that when they do their report back. So the train of thought there, because I get quite excited about that. I like physiology. So the students might have a lecture about that, and certainly at Flinders we have some scientists who are doing research on that, cutting edge research on it. And so they come in and they will tell the students, you know, what's happening and what's potentially the theories of the day. And that contextualises it even more for the students. So when they come back and they look at their books and they try to understand how this is happening, it's richer learning for them. It's live, yeah, and it's what's happening in the real world. So now the learning issues. If you were to write a learning issue out of what we've got here, what sort of things would you write? And how do you write a learning issue? Has anybody got experience in writing learning issues? Do you know what I mean by a learning issue? Okay, a learning issue is an area that students believe that they need to go away and learn to understand this case. To be able to write it, you have to be able to define what you want to know. You have to be able to refine the area that you want to know, because you can't go away and learn all about the sensory nervous system, because that's beyond the scope. We want to learn about a certain aspect of it. So in writing these learning issues, we might actually be going right underneath and saying, we want to understand how nerves conduct impulses, but we specifically want to know about the sensory nervous system of the arm. So then they'll come back and they'll have diagrams of the nerves that we've been talking about. They'll come back with diagrams of the distribution of sensation on the arm. They'll come back with information that might have, some students come back with a lot more information than you actually need to understand it. But I always find that if they've gone away and come back with huge amounts of information, it's always, I feel it's my duty to let them show a little bit of it, because they've done work, and I really enjoy people who love learning. And so I allow them to have a little bit of it, but it can confuse others. So you have to work that one out. You have to be able to control that a little bit. But let's anybody got an idea? It's always good to have a learning issue as a question. So what questions associated with this do you think you'd like to write?
So put yourself in the shoes of a student, and you have to go home and you need to study this. If you go home with pain mechanisms, what are you going to study? Where are you going to find that information? You know, big books on that kind of topic. So how can we help you focus so that you focus down on to help you what is relevant to this case? So is it all pain mechanisms we need to know, or some specific mechanisms? What specific types of pain are we talking about here? Nerve damage. What's the name for the sort of pain you get from nerve damage? So we might say, let's make it that simple. What are the mechanisms of pain in nerve damage? There's specific types of nerve, and they'll come back, they'll read up about it. They won't have this word when they leave with the learning issue, but when they come back, they'll have learned about neuropathic pain. Yeah? So it's helping them to narrow down what they read so that they don't pull out and have to read the entire physiology textbook, or Randall and Schwartz neurosciences, or any of that in one hit. So narrow it down.
And here I've got written down how to help them define it. Now these are only a few tips that I've put down, and students will by themselves do this automatically, but it's ask what do you need to know to find out to help understand the underlying problem. Write learning issues as questions. If you write them as statements, they're kind of like a bit closed, whereas if you ask them as questions, it gives them scope to look it up. Should be specific areas of knowledge. One of my first year groups in human homeostasis, one of their cases was on the autonomic nervous system, and it was only on a small, we were just looking at the role of adrenaline. These students wrote a learning issue, understand the autonomic nervous system. I let them go, and when they came back they said, oh, That's huge. And they said, oh, you know, in looking at it when we were going and researching it, I think we only need, you know, this part here looked as though it was more relevant than the whole lot. And I thought, they've learned quickly. But they didn't ever do that again. They had to refine it. So it is good sometimes to let them go off and make a few mistakes. Safely, but it is sometimes more learning. Also write them the learning issues as a logical dissection of the problem. So we've got this problem here. We want to know why he's got shoulder pain. We want to know why he's got these changing sensations. He's got these other issues there. We want to understand it. So these are the underlying pain that we want. There are lots of resources that the students can use. Here's some examples of how they might write them. The first one's not written as a question, Julie's just said. That's true. Anatomy of nerve supply to the arm and shoulder. Should really be what is. What is the significance of the different types of pain? And what causes pain? The relationship between tissue damage and the brain's perception. So that's looking at what we've brainstormed in the group. Where did you write it, Julie? CNS and... oh, down here. So we had all of this that you put in there. So we've written them very clearly, defined, and the students will go away and they'll come back with what I'll show you in a little while. Oh, sorry. I'll just quickly go through. So this is the plan of it. So we actually have, we've only just done this first section up the top. Students will go away and they will all research the learning issues, every single one of them. They won't, sometimes they like to allocate learning issues and only do one and present one. That's not good in my book. They have to go away and all research them, and then they come back for reporting back. Now that's what we're going to have in our workshop. We're going to have some of our students, when you're the tutor, they're going to go away and report back. What I might do is just quickly go on. So here is the student learning evaluation, and I don't know whether it's very clear, but some of these are quite specific. You can see some of their objectives up here. The first one is to describe the anatomy of the peripheral and central neural pathways that carry afferent information. Now students at that time, after they've come back on their research, will know that there are afferent and efferent, so they'll be familiar with these terms. And here, classify pain according to the type. Appreciate that stimulus does not always lead to the same sensation. Is there questions about it? So this is an example of the learning objectives that are part of the curriculum that we've tried to get to here, and we've only gone through a small section of this case. But we're touching on most of them, but the full case we have filling it up. I've really noticed that we're running right over time. So is there any questions, any comments, any concern?
So at this stage, we are going to evolve the training to fit with our pace, what you need. So we were going to do another session now on the tutor role, but it's out of time because we want to take things through at a good pace, and also to make sure that we are working at a pace across 2 languages. I'm aware that working in another language is very tiring. Your brain has to work so hard. So we're going to finish now, and when we come back tomorrow, we'll get you to be students in a PBL pace, and it will be very active and I think energising. And then after that, we'll brief you on the switch to being a tutor, and then in the afternoon, we're going to have a go at being a tutor with a real student group. So tomorrow is much less of this. We'll be working in PBL rooms, we'll be much more active. Hopefully you'll have an enjoyable experience. But we will work at your pace. Okay? Yeah.